Good morning, everyone. Okay,
Good morning, Bante.
good morning. Ko hinaawක්වත් නැහැ කට්ටිය නෙමෙයි. මොකද?
අපිව මියුට් කරලා ඉතින් ඇහෙන්නේ නැහැ අපි good morning කිව්වා.
All right. හරි. So before we start, as usual, my Dhamma contemplation for you today. In Buddhism, we have what we call floods, right? It's called in Pali, it's called Oga. And what is the nature of a flood? The nature of a flood is that, it sort of comes into a place that it shouldn't be. It sort of overfloods and covers, engulfs a place, a piece of land, earth, where water should not be, devastating whatever which is done in that area, making people having to sort of relocate. A flood halts what should be done, right? In Buddhism, we have, or the Buddha speaks of in the Oga Sutta, about 4 floods, right, that happens to man. The 4 floods being Kama Oga, Bhava Oga, Ditti Oga, and Avidya Oga. Kama is the sensuality, the sensual pleasures, right? Bhava Oga is the floods of becoming. Becoming. Then we have Ditti Yoga, the views. The views. And then finally we have Avidya Yoga, which is ignorance. Right. Now, some might imagine, okay, how do these floods sort of operate in our life? Now, we come into, it is a known thing, or, I think, of course, we are coming out of that sort of blatant mentality now. But before, maybe not too long ago, Buddhism or the practice is something which was seen as something which should be practiced by old people, right? People who have sort of done everything in their lives and, matured in their years, and now they sort of go into sort of the practice of Dhamma. And this was actually a view which we find in the Tipitaka as well, where it is spoken of, where the young, they earn, they have their families, they raise their families, and they do whatever that needs to be done. And then when they mature in their years, having accomplished whatever it is that they want to accomplish, or having not accomplished whatever that they want to accomplish, matured in years, now having to give the baton to the youth, they find themselves in a position where, now they speak of, okay, it is time for me to devote my time and attention to the practice, right? And this is something that people of the time came to the Buddha and they would relate to the Buddha. And then the Buddha would sort of enlighten these people to say, no, the fact of the dangers of samsara does not only affect those who have matured in their years, but it affects even the youngest of infants. However, because we are over flooded by these ogres, these floods that come into our life, we assume, or we are distracted by these 4 qualities of existence that comes into our life. You take your children who might be, in the age of, having their families, raising their families with their careers, you would say they're very busy, they're quite busy, they're taken up by all the work. And then they, before that, they were sort of taken up by their studies, taken up by their studies and having to sort of prep themselves to going into university, or sort of molding out their careers, what they could be in the future, all of these things. The Buddha sees all of these things as distractions, or rather floods in this case scenario, where we are flooded, our minds, our sensual sense doors are flooded by these four different type of ogres. So what happens when this flood happens? We do not see reality. The reality being that there are things that are impermanent in this world, that because of the changes of causes and conditions, that these realities change. We try to try to grasp onto things that have higher sensual pleasure value, so that we can have more pleasures out of it, going from one bhava to the other. Then we have our views that we take up, thinking that these views will sustain our existence, only to sort of realize that these views also go through its own law of change in its own way, and that these views are conditioned by the mundane forces of ignorance and all of that. And then we have ignorance itself, which in any moment that we try to sort of go inwards, we are persuaded that there are things outside to look at. These ogres in our life arise each and every moment to a person who is unaware. The Buddha's only advice in relation to getting rid of these ogres is this sort of awareness, this samadhi, this vipassana, to be able to see that this is not what you think, that this is actually a distraction, distracting us from the inevitable truths of the world. Right now, people, we assume that life is, of course, life is good. Life has its good parts. Life is not all bad. However, now through this sort of whole period, this whole year that we have been going through with this virus, the fact of reality, the realities of life have been magnified to such a great extent that people can't handle it any longer. The fact that however much finances or expendable income you might have, you can't travel. In Sri Lanka, however much finances you have or stability in finance you have, you are unable to buy whatever it is that you want. There's scarcity in food now. There's illness all around. And there is this fear, will I contract the virus? Will I die? These are realities which existed in our world since the beginning of humanity. The fact of illness, old age, death, all of these things was there. It is nothing new. But now we find it magnified to such a great extent, where we see it every single day, where we might be fearful of it to such a great extent, because we can't avoid it any longer, because it's in all the media outlets, it's in everything that we read, it's in every social media post that we might see, that now we are inundated by the reality of life, that there is impermanence, decay, death in every turning corner of life. People are unable to handle it, because we cannot be distracted any longer. We have to focus on being safe. We had to focus on keeping healthy, which before was quite a easy process, because there was no virus going around. It affected people who might have had weak bodies, or maybe cancerous cells in their body, or prone to illnesses. Yes, they were going through it, but as a world, we are all going through it now. See, this magnified the fact of reality, Now you see the whole world being in a mental health crisis, Sri Lanka included. People just don't know what tomorrow is going to be, what a week after is going to be, a month is going to be. What is this? This is the fact of the world showing us nothing else, nothing that is new. This is a reality that existed for the whole duration of the many decades that you have been living and from the start of humanity itself. See, now it is difficult. Now it is difficult. We might have bragged about having this sort of stability of mind where we were open to that facing of old age, death, and all of that. But now, when it is magnified, people are scared. What will happen? People start pointing hands. The government is not handling it properly. He or she is not doing their jobs. All of these things, all of that fear arises from the fact that we have not really understood what the reality of the world has been for so long. Think about it. We've always had death around. We've always had illness around. We've always had sickness sort of, you know, around us. We've been keeping safe. We've been trying to keep healthy. But now the effort that we have to make is far more greater to keep healthy. It is almost a struggle to survive. But this struggle was spoken of by the Buddha. This struggle was spoken of by the Buddha so 2600 years ago. And since then, we've been going through it, but we did not realize. Now, when we have caught illness, when we see illness, when we see death in death's eyes, we realize, oh my gosh, I've been wasting my time. I should have given more time to my family. People come into these realizations. I read a couple of articles that people had posted, from their deathbeds, from the hospitals, beautiful articles that they had written. And all these professional people, a boy, 26 years old, my age, financial consultant, died. But through his sort of journey, he was sort of journaling. And he expresses everything that the Buddha would express, meaning I should have had more gratitude for every living breath that I had. I should have thought twice before smoking that cigarette, thinking that this would not affect my health, but now I'm suffering because of it. I thought that climbing the social ladder was all that would make me happy, but now I realize to hug my mother would be the greatest pleasure that I would have at this moment. But now I am in a hospital and I would probably die within the week. We all go, that is what the ogre does, you see. A ogre, kama, bhava, ditti, avijja. Imagine a man with his eyes open and a movie being displayed for the whole sort of span of that man's life. That is an ogre, where the man is so engulfed in this theatrical presentation of samsara, where he forgets that there is a being within and there's a being who sees and a being who experiences, and this experience changes every moment. That is an ogre, where your sort of logical reasoning is tampered with, is sort of defiled in a way where we do not realize that this world that we live in is something that we would have to leave one day. And when we do finally have to leave it, that we are not going to be taking anything that we sort of cried and wailed over in this world. The only thing that we are going to take is the good and the bad that we were able to do. The good and the bad that we were able to do. That is that reality. And that is what the ogres keeps us away from. And that is what we, most of you have now sort of retired. You're not working any longer, most of you, right? People assume that when you mature in your years and you don't have to do all of these things now, that you have the time. But thing is, this affects not only the people mature in their years, just because you might have the time to engage in spiritual enlightenment, but this affects those children from the most young of years, from infancy all the way up until we reach our deathbed. And you are nothing special. It is only the fact that you might be, from society's eyes, they might say, oh, they are not busy, they're retired, so they had the time to do these things. But no, that is because we put it into second place. Through awareness, through vipassana, we realize that this is not something for second place, that it is actually something for first place. And the second place is actually that which sort of feeds us and sort of, does all of these other things. Why? Because at the end, whether you feed yourself today and then you die tomorrow, or whether you don't feed yourself and die today, you are going to die. I'm sorry, is this sounding a bit too gloomy? But this is the reality, isn't it? This is the reality. The first place the Buddha says, you see, the Buddha says there are many ways to attain enlightenment, right? Many ways. In the Abhidhamma, it classes 1,000 ways through the Satipatthana, the four foundations of mindfulness. There are 1,000 strategies that can be used in accordance with the Buddha's teachings to attain enlightenment. 1,000. We can discuss the 1,000 later on, but there are actually 1,000, exactly 1,000. These 1,000 ways all, so sorry. These 1,000 ways, these 1,000 ways all come under one umbrella. That umbrella is the devotion to reality, which we call insight. Insight might sound like something Buddhistic, but it is not Buddhistic. Actually, insight should not be Buddhist. Why? By Buddhism, we relate to Buddhist culture, Buddhist traditions. Insight is something which engulfs the world. It's the reality of the world, devoid of whether you're a Buddhist or not. It is a ability to separate yourself from all these cultures, traditions, everything that is a part of the mundane world, to realize a state of being that is, or that has, ability of understanding over the entirety of the world's sort of origination, the world's conditions, causes, and all of that. That vipassana is that what we are trying, or we are all here to practice today. That is what we are trying to practice today. The ability to separate ourselves from the being. The being is Sri Lankan. The being is Buddhist or Catholic or Muslim or Hindu or whatever it is. The being has the deities and all of that. We separate ourselves. And in that separation, we are now granted sort of the key to the doorway to open that sort of insight in our minds, to be able to now allow this gushing out of wisdom relating to whatever which is truly going on in the world, to give us that enforcing that we all require, to have the guts, the strength of backbone, to be able to look reality in reality's eyes and say, I am aware. When one looks at reality in reality's eyes, you are no longer afraid, because you know that as a being who has journeyed through samsara, you have been doing this again and again and again and again. In doing so, what is there to fear? What is there to fear now? What is there to do is not to fear, but to have this ability of resilience, strength, to cultivate the mind, to be able to now come out of that cycle. And that is what we are all here to do this morning. So let us allow when we close our eyes, when we do our anapana or vipassana or whatever it is that we will be doing through these 1.5 hours now, what anything that comes into your mind is sort of like a flood. If you think that's when some sensual pleasure or some experience of the past or something that you had to do or get done through today or tomorrow or through the weekend or through the next coming week arises, realize that this is a flood of sorts taking over your mind, because we might mentally presume that those things are more important than what we are doing right now. In having the ability to understand that those floods are external and this what we are doing is internal, in a way that this is what you're going to die with, not that. This is what you're going to take with you, not that. This is what is going to cause your weakness or strength, not that. In knowing that, give predominance of energy to this cultivation, not the cultivation and development of that, at least for these 1.5 hours. At least for these 1.5 hours. So let us take a deep breath in, sitting ourselves comfortably. Being motivated and inspired by the teachings of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Inspired by all the practitioners of the world, take a deep breath in, knowing that this can be done, that hard things might have been done by you in the past. Relaxing the body, the mind. Allow yourself, allow yourself to go deeper into this relaxation of the moment, arriving fully in this moment, settling your mind, your thoughts, responsibilities, duties. Relax, relax. Taking another deep breath in. Relax the body, the mind, feeling lighter and lighter as you gently, gently become aware of the body, the state of the mind, separating yourself from any assumptions of what the practice could be today, or how you would like the meditation to be. Separate yourselves from all of those mentalities, focusing not on the future or the past, regardless of what the weather might be today, or how cold or warm it might be wherever you might be. Just be here in the now, knowing that this is all you need. Relax in the body and the mind as you take another deep breath in, letting go, letting go, letting go. Gently, gently. Being mindful of the posture, knowing where your arms, your legs, your feet, the back, not being dependent upon comfort, but having a good posture at the same time, not rigid, but just the right posture to continue your practice with ease. Allow yourself to guide your attention towards the breath, towards the breath, being aware, being aware, observing, observing the breath without control or any sort of manipulation. With a deep, deep sense of letting go and disattachment, but still mindfully aware of the breath as you take or attempt to take a step back and observing the breath as an object separate from the mind that observes. You might first struggle a bit to get to this position, but know that it is possible, and all you need to do is let go a little bit more. If you are struggling, putting aside the future or the past, not comparing this practice to earlier practices, or not hoping this practice to be of a certain way. Completely, entirely allow yourself to let go. observing the breath, observing the breath. Observe the arising and the passing away in each and every moment of the breath. Finding right balance, a balance where the breath can be observed without any external manipulation from even the mind. Be at it. Attempt to maintain samadhi. Even if you fail once, try again. Try again. Take every moment as a fresh new moment with a childlike awareness, where the inquisitive mind is aware about what is going on with the breath, but not attached in any way, and not comparing it to anything of the past. Allow yourself to be in the present. Be in the present. whatever that would arise in the mind, letting go and exercising this letting go throughout the practice, not feeding into any of the emotions or different types of mentalities that will arise in the mind. Do not be swayed by anything in the background or that would arise in the mind. Always allow yourself to come into the present, observe the breath, observe the breath. gently. If you would think that you need to be inspired, allow yourself to draw inspiration from the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, allowing yourself to go deeper and deeper to this observation, to the arising of vipassana within the mind. Practice non-clinging in every moment, every moment. Exert the right amount of attention and awareness. Attention and awareness. Gently taking a deep breath in, breathing out, relaxing the mind and the body even deeper. Allow yourself to imagine as you relax the mind and the body becoming lighter and lighter, as light as a cloud. Relax, relax, relax. As you take another deep breath in, breathing out, relaxing deeper, deeper. Gently, gently. When you are ready, opening your eyes and awakening into the present. Okay, so if you would like to sort of go to the loo, just freshen up yourself, grab a cup of coffee, please do so. And shall we come back in 5 minutes, please? Yeah, thank you. All right. So, something that I would like to ask you today before we move on to our last bit of the meditation is, is there anyone in the class who is still unclear about the technique, unclear about parts like when I would say take a step back or let go, unclear of how to sort of balance the samadhi, or unclear on what I mean when I would say things like keep trying? Hmm? Yes, Sujata. Sujata, you had to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
I was just going to ask you the very question about stepping back.
Okay.
I was wondering what it was in this process of meditation.
All right. So, taking a step back in the process of meditation, or what we would intend by the word or by the term stepping back, is the fact of separating yourself from the action.
Uh-huh.
So, the action here being, for example, with breathing meditation, the action is the action of breathing, the action which is now an involuntary function of breathing. Taking a step back is essentially letting go, separating oneself from that action, which would mean to not control, to not manipulate the breath in any way, to not compare the breath which is observed at present with the breath which might have been aware in previous practices, and to not enforce what you would assume or your aspirations for the breath and the awareness over the breath. So
You
taking
mean sorry, aspirations?
okay, so aspiration means, for example, sometimes the breath is fast, you want to make it slow, right?
Yes.
You aspire to have a practice where you can properly be aware of the breath in and every moment. That is any sort of aspiration in terms of where you want your practice to go. From all of that, taking a step back, meaning, and how you would do that is you separate yourself from all of those motions and actions in a way which is fueled by understanding and vipassana, right? The impermanence, the suffering, the non self attributes, even to a certain extent, have to come to play here. Because, or else, how are you going to motivate yourself to take a step back?
Yes, I understand now.
Realizing the sense of non self within the breath, right? That is fueled. Now it is a very difficult, I mean, it might sound like a very simple question, but it is very difficult to sort of put into and articulate into words. But
Yes.
what I could say is, when you know, for example, the non-self of the breath, or if you know the impermanence of the breath, right? The breath at every moment, now you experience a fast breath or a slow breath. The mind says, or you say, oh, the breath is quite fast today. Now you have clung, clung,
Right.
C-L-U-N-G, clung onto the breath, right?
Right.
In you not paying or sort of pouring in sort of energy um, into that sort of clinging, allows you to now take a step back, right? Knowing that it is a momentary experience which arises and passes away every moment, allows you to take a step back, right? The
Yes.
stepping back has to be done through wisdom,
Yes.
right?
Fully.
Through wisdom, right? This is not to keep on contemplating the Dhamma, but it comes through practice, right?
Yes.
So remember, even actually in the beginning, you can take a visualization, or you can make it into a visualization practice where you visualize yourself now with the breath, in the sense of clinging on to the breath, or with aspirations or comparisons or whatever it is with the past or the future. You literally take a step back in mind where you are now able to observe it as an object in its own nature, and you are quite away but yet observing. The simile that I like to use is, imagine waiting for a bus, right? And there is another bus stop on the opposite side of the road, and there is a person standing there, right? You do not know this person. This person is left to his own devices, right? But you are aware, you have no judgments about the person. You don't want to make any judgments about the person. You don't want to control the person. You don't want to manipulate the person. You don't have any aspirations or inspirations about this person. It is just an external object. And you are standing on this side of the road, but you are aware about what this person is doing, but no judgment, right? In that sense, you take a step back.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah,
That's a lovely example. Thank you. That's lovely.
yeah. Yes. So if anyone, if it's still not clear, um, make it. Let me know. The aspect of this, the importance of this stepping back is separating yourself with the process of engagement or the process of the object itself, right? With the process itself. Yes, Neha.
Hi, Bante. Bante, I had a question. So just going back to what you just said, I mean, I'm at a stage where I do tend to focus on my breath to help me meditate better. And from what I understood, you're suggesting is being aware of it, but also letting go to experience, I suppose, meditation in its supreme form. Um, but my question to you is, when you're still at that beginner stage, what do you cling on to be able to focus, uh, you know, um, on your meditation practice?
Yes. What you cling on to is what you cling on to. If I'm to put it in this way, first of all, we must understand that we do not need to cling to experience, right? Some might say, there's a beautiful flower in the garden, but you don't necessarily need to cut it and bring it into the house, right? It can be left in the garden and you can enjoy the flower being in the garden, but you don't need to cut it and bring it into the house and put it into a vase, right? In the same way, with any sort of experience that we have, having that ability to know that to experience and enjoy an object, we do not need to cling on to an object. This is very intimately experienced with food, right? Now, for example, let's take a very gross example. Let's say you go to this, very good Michelin starred restaurant, right? Where they serve up, a very, very good meal. If we cling on to the meal to such an extent where you are now no longer able to enjoy a normal home cooked meal, that is just blasphemy, isn't it? Right? Because we are not going to be able to do gastronomy in our home kitchens. Right? See, now that is a very gross example in the way when we cling on to an experience, what it also says that we will not be able to enjoy other experiences if it is not in that path, which is not life. Experiences vary. The knowledge that we have, the wisdom that we have, allows us to know this fact that experiences are different. Not all experiences are the same, but experiences are, at the end of the day, experiences, right? In knowing that, we are able to now immerse in us in our own way with non-attachment, immerse ourselves in an experience, but not get attached into an experience. Now that is a skill that we are developing, Neha, right? So one might say that this is, we are beginners, but this is, something advanced. It really isn't, right? If we get this is a beginner's practice. This is what we train. That is why getting started in meditation might be difficult. But when we hack this, afterwards, it's very easy to carry on, right? So for all of you who might be struggling with the stepping back practice, the letting go practice, experiencing it as an experience and nothing else. To those of you who read the sutras, remember when the Buddha says, knowing a sound as a sound, knowing a rupa as a rupa, knowing taste as taste, meaning knowing the experience as an experience of what? Of that moment, right? In the same way, we apply that to the breath, knowing the breath as the breath. That's it. There is no background story about it. The background story comes with our views and all of these things that we complicate the whole mix. No, that is not necessary. The breath is the breath. Fast, slow, vague, clear, obscure. The breath is the breath. You have no qualms or problems about it. Why? Because we are not comparing it with the past. We don't have aspirations for it, for the future. We are just here. So anything that arises with the breath is okay. All right. Neha, I hope I made that clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anuma.
Yes, Bhante. I think I got the answer a little bit, but I'm still confused a bit. Now, when you say taking a step back, we cannot practice this at the anapana, with breathing, because you always said to concentrate on the breathing, the way you breathe, where it touches. And I think this taking a step back could be experienced when you come to Vipassana. Is that what you mean, Bhante?
No, Anuma, no. No. In Vipassana, we experience it to a deeper level. True.
Mm-hmm.
In the basic stages, what we essentially, when we are young, sometimes when we pour stuff out of a bottle, we might spill it. When we eat, we might spill our food. We don't know how to eat properly, right? But what do we learn? Our parents teach us to eat properly with our hands, to hold the spoons properly, or to sort of serve ourselves properly without spilling on the table. Isn't it, Anuma?
Yeah,
Right?
Bhante.
That forms the basis to eat for the entirety of the rest of the life.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way, this is a skill that you develop essentially right now. What we do, this applies to everything in our life. For example, you all are parents. Your children are rude to you time to time, right?
Mm-hmm.
They put their opinions on you or whatnot. As a mother or a father, if you take all of these things on board in a very personal manner, it's going to create a lot of heartache. So what do you do as a parent? Oh, my children, they're children, they're defiled, you apply Buddhism to it, whatever it is. And you separate yourself from that in a way that you understand that this is, just them being angry or something like that. That's what we do, isn't it?
Yes, Bhante.
Right? In the Anapana, again, that is the same thing that we do. We understand that this is the reality of the breath and this is not the person, because then that is self.
Mm-hmm.
We separate the self and we come or arrive at a place where we can see non-self. And the non-self is the every moment, impermanence, anicca, in every moment, the fact that we can't control the breath, right? We can control the breath, but then it becomes very difficult to maintain the breath, right? That is what we try to, the skill that we develop through this sort of coming back, right? So no, Anoma, it is not Vipassana. It is the basic, absolute basic of meditation. Taking that step back, that is letting go.
Okay, Bhante.
Right?
Yeah.
Every moment, because remember, when you feed into a consciousness, when you feed into emotion, you're putting energy there. What we do is we put energy into mindfulness, awareness, and not that motion. So the motion is now nature. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
The motion is nature. Mindfulness is empowered. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, Bhante.
Right? The motion, the object has to always be nature.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yes, Bhante.
Asana is the reality of nature.
Yeah.
Do we understand?
Yes,
If
Bante.
you are confused, because by the time of the retreat, I want you to really be
Yeah, Bante. Yeah.
on.
No, thank you, Bante. Yeah. I think in day-to-day life, taking a step back, knowingly or unknowingly, I mean, we apply, I think. But
Yeah.
when it comes to meditation, that only, that was a bit worried. Now I know, now I can understand. It's clear, Bante.
And
Thank
for
you.
those of you who are here to sort of make your daily lives better, of course, as Buddhists, we all, attempt to do that. Remember, when you hack this skill, you will be so good at dealing with the stressors of life in such a profoundly better manner,
Yeah,
without getting
Bante.
personally engulfed in the sorrows and the happinesses of the world, where you will then be in these constant influxes. All right, Keshari.
Thank you, Bante.
Thank you, Anuma.
Good morning, Bante.
Good morning, Keshari.
Um, so my observation is when I first joined your classes, it was hugely difficult for me even to concentrate on a breath. It was like a butterfly that landed and then flew away and landed and flew away. And the more I'm doing it, not on my own, this doesn't happen when I'm on my own, but when I join your classes, I'm finding that my body and my breath feel so light that I know I'm breathing, I know I have a body, but I don't know where it is.
Sure.
And then my eyes are closed, but I see a very bright light. And then you speak and you say, concentrate on the breath, and I'm back down again. And I don't know where to be.
Okay. The thing is, okay, is that it?
Yes.
Okay. The thing is, good, Keshari. But know that you don't have to be anywhere. And being is not one pointed when it comes to existence. Being is experience itself. Right? Being is the experience when you have shut your eyes, when you have mentally put everything that you have to get done through your day or what you've been doing through the week, you've just basically just put it all aside. And when you're sitting here with your eyes closed and you hear my voice, or whatever that is going on, remember, that is being.
Okay.
You don't have to be here or there or there. That is not what we're focused. Being is this moment.
Okay.
Being is the present. And anything that arises, right? Anything that arises, that is where the focus now, for example, if we are studying, we have all studied, we are still studying Dhamma and all of these things. When you're studying, that focus relating to study and the focus relating to mindfulness is a little bit different.
Okay.
Focus in study, which is known as Miccha Samadhi, right? In relation to the Eightfold Noble Path, the focus on study is known as Miccha Samadhi, or wrong concentration in relation to mindfulness, right? In relation to mindfulness, it's known as wrong concentration. Why? Because that concentration does not allow us to be our most authentic self.
Right.
When we are studying, we are wholly engulfed in that book or that data that we are sort of trying to take in.
Yeah.
Here, we are in the being of existence.
Yeah. Okay.
And the being of existence encompasses all the experiences that are around, including that light, including my breath, including the draft that might be coming from your window, whatever it is all encompassing of that experience.
Okay.
But as I mentioned last week, remember, first of all, Keshri, now you said the light, my voice, and you might, for example, have some movement around the house, and you might have the temperature also, right? So then if this is you or this is your mind, you're going from temperature, light, my voice to something else, the sounds around the house. You're moving like this, right? We think this is experience. This is resonant with the others as well. you know, because focus, right? That's what we're thinking. That's the focus that we know, right? Which is to focus, concentrate on something, because that's how we've been studying. That's how we built our careers. That's how we sort of raised our children. We focus on them. But remember, this focus in terms of mindfulness, meditation, it doesn't move. It's here. And this has the ability of sensory perception beyond that focus upon the book. You understand what I mean? It is almost as if, just imagine you sitting here, unwavered, unmoved, unswayed. And now, right now, I hear the birds, I hear the cars, I hear the blowing of the wind, the crackling of the leaves, I hear all of this, but I am not swayed in any way, right? It is that which is that experience of the present, Keshri.
Yeah, I get it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is, and thank you for asking that question, because I've not said that before, right? I've not said that in the meditation class. And that is very important, everyone, right? Because when we say focus, you know, focus is a very aggressive word. I don't particularly like that word, because, you know, it's like enforcing something, because that's what we know, isn't it? We were, you know, with studies, with everything that we do, but we have, that changes a bit, right? That changes a bit. It's almost as if a seismograph, yeah, which senses seismic waves, the earthquakes and all of that, right? A seismograph, how it operates is it has this sort of it sort of exudes this sort of frequency which tracks. It's not that there are sensors there within that sort of the continental plates. It doesn't have sensors placed on the continental plates, right? A seismograph does not have sensors placed. You know what continental plates are, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. The continental plates, it's what divides the continents. It's in the deeps or the trenches of the ocean and all of that. That's where the earthquakes and all of that happens, right? And a continental plate, it moves in three ways. It has a grade 8 science, okay? So, okay, so it moves in three ways. A seismograph doesn't have sensors on the continental plates. It has a frequency which catches all of these movements, which then predicts how it's going to reach land. That is what mindfulness focus is. Do you understand?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
I hope that made it more clear,
Yes, it
right?
did. Thank you.
Because the machine is in some station on land, right? The machine is on some station on land, and it has this frequency, which then, when this frequency is obstructed, it catches the waves, the waves that are created by the continental shelves when it sort of moves. That is then predicted on a graph. That is what mindfulness concentration is. What we would do with a book, right, when we are studying a book, is as if a seismograph would have sensors on the continental shelves, right? You have a sensor there, so you see, but that's not the way a seismograph works, right? That is the, so not having that sort of sensor, this frequency, it's almost as if whatever arises now, right now, I'm not expecting, if I am just sitting here, I'm not looking for the sounds of the birds, I'm not looking for the crackling of the leaves, I'm not looking for the cars, but it's happening around me. And when it happens, because my awareness is now sort of reaching out to all of these, it's there. What is happening? It's created by the question, what is happening around me? Or just basically by me being here, focusing on the senses. And I pick up all of these different things. Unmoved, not swayed in any way, but just experience of that moment. Is that clear, everyone?
Thank you.
I was just, Bante, excuse me.
Yeah.
I was just going to ask you about this plates in the ocean you spoke of.
Okay.
Is it something to do with the tsunami? They say when that moves, eruption in the sea,
Yes, it is. Yeah,
something like that.
it's not some. It is that.
Yeah, thank
So,
you. I was
so
wondering.
as
Thank you.
remember, the continental plates, they shift in concave, convex, and no, I can't remember the three words, but it shifts in three ways. It goes over, it goes under, it rubs against each other, right? And it there are four actually, and it separates and knocks again, right?
That's
These
right.
creates whatever tides and tsunamis and all of these things that we say. But that's not a mindfulness lesson. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Bhante.
All right. So is it clear, everyone? I want you to truly understand what we mean by this focus. Because as long as we are looking out for something, self exists. Separating self comes from not looking out for something, but experiencing it as it happens. Right? As it happens. Is it clear? Please ask if it is not, if you have any doubts.
Bhante, one more question. So sometimes, I talk to myself during meditation, and by that I mean, if my thoughts take me to my worries or something that I've been thinking about, I talk myself back into meditation. Should I just let go at that point, or is that good to actually bring back my attention to?
In the beginning, we all use internal dialogue to persuade the mind to come back to the object. But when you again hack the ability of letting go, and when you are able to now sense where your energy of mind is going into, when you know that as an experience, you do not need you do not need the internal dialogue any longer, right? It settles far more easily and far more organically as the practice becomes stronger, right? As the practice becomes stronger, something as the practice becomes stronger, and that is something to be aware of. If the internal dialogue now on a day that you have really gone through maybe a rough week, maybe that roughness of the week is still pouring into the weekend because you're a bit stressed about what's going to happen on Monday, right? If that is there will probably be a lot of internal dialogue. Remember, the internal dialogue is not necessarily your friend, but this is the egotistical nature of the mind. And when we use the word ego, the British do not like the word ego, you see. So in secular mindfulness teaching, we are always taught to minimize and reduce the usage of the word ego, right? Because ego rubs off and gives people a very a negative impression, right? But ego meaning, because when we say ego, we always sort of have a very high and mighty sort of thing. But remember, ego is self, right? So it has variations from the lowest of egos to the highest of egos, right? It is a self. Whenever the self is there, the internal dialogue, when the self is now slowly being subdued, the internal dialogue will also be subdued. That is why, again, we would say the importance of the object being a part of nature and the enforcement of mental energy being a part of the mindfulness or the sati or the samadhi. Do you understand, Neha? Is
Thank
that
you.
clear,
Yeah, thank you.
right?
Yes.
Now, do you understand when I say this enforcement of mind? Do you understand what this is, what I am referring to? No? Yes?
Bhante, please explain. Yeah, that'd be helpful.
No. The enforcement of mind is now Dr. Hiromi Shinya from Japan, one of the most, who was the guy who discovered the endoscopy, as I remember. No, the colonoscopy. Yes, the colonoscopy. Dr. Hiromi Shinya. Um, Dr. Hiromi Shinya, he wrote a book about the enzyme factor, right? The enzyme factor, which was a brilliant book, the enzyme factor, and he won a lot of world awards for it. So the enzyme factor speaks about a coenzyme, right? And this coenzyme, depending upon what you put into the body, the enzymes go through a change in its cellular structure and chemical structure to be able to now digest whatever which is put into the body. So you might sometimes, let's say you have fried chicken, for example, and with a serving of leaves, right? You have a lot of fried chicken. And then the morning after, you would see maybe some indigestion with regards to the leaves that you've eaten. Why? Because the enzymes that you've had in your gut have all been used up to digest those hard proteins of the chicken or the fried chicken, the oils and the proteins and all of that, right? In the fried chicken. So you see that the chicken might have been digested, but the leaves have not been digested, right? I mean, we experience this, right? That is very similar to what happens with the mind. Because remember, we are mundane beings who are living a mundane life experience. We have troubles in our lives as well as happiness, a lot of happiness and a lot of troubles, right? Sometimes the troubles may be overwhelmingly more. Regardless, being mundane beings, we work with a certain amount of mental energy, right? Mental energy. So at the end of the week, or maybe if you're having a really tough week, by Wednesday, it is predicted by the energy flow of a person who's working. By Wednesday, it starts to reduce dramatically. So by Thursday, you're really like, oh my gosh, when is the Friday going to come? Right? Why is that? Because you've strained yourselves through Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, because it's a really hectic week, really mentally challenging. So now you're ready for the weekend as soon as possible, so your productivity reduces. Why? You don't have much more energy left to give, right? But when you, that is why now in areas like finance, in very competitive areas of that sort, they don't look for the smartest. They look for people who are smart and also who are able to make that their entire life, right? So if you probably have children and you're married and all of that, that is played as something as a negative factor when it comes to an area of that sort, if you don't have prior experience, because they want people who will give their whole entire life into the craft, because then they will have energy to give, you see, because that's their life, right? They look for that passion, that drive, right? And that is going to be advantageous when you're working in a highly stressful industry, because then you produce that energy. That's the same thing with the meditation, you see, right? We have a limited amount of energy because we are not 100% convinced that we can do this full time, right? If even for example the 13-hour retreat that we are going to be doing, you might be wondering in your mind, oh my gosh, 13 hours, why is that thought there? Because we are not 100% convinced, right? We are not 100% convinced that you can do this properly. So we have a limited amount of energy. Now, this limited amount of energy, when something, let's say a negative force arises, or something with thought arises, or something with the sensual pleasures arises, when you're going to be giving this energy into those things, you're going to reduce the amount of energy that you have for mindfulness. Because those things, they're like magnets. They grab, they don't take what you give. They will hold on to it and they will start tugging, right? They will start tugging at it and try to take everything that you have. That is clinging, right? That is clinging. So that is why we enforce mindfulness, meaning that energy that you have, you give it to mindfulness and not the object, you see. Right? Is that understood? Right?
Thank you. That was
I
very
hope
clear.
that is clear.
Yeah, thank you.
You give it to the mindfulness and not the object, because if you give it to the object starts having now what assumes like a life of its own. What does an object having a life of its own look like might be a question that arises in the mind. Let's say anger. Right now the element is anger. That's the truest nature of that consciousness. You have fought with a sibling, you have fought with your kids or your partner, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. It's anger. Right now when you feed into the anger, now it has a life of its own. Now you're like, oh, he did this, how dare he, and you build up that story with. But that is the life that you give to the object. When you take away or when you don't feed the object energy, it is just anger, which is less personal, less intimate, because you are not all encompassing of anger. Anger is a byproduct or is a product or is a small part of you. But when you start giving anger life, it becomes something all encompassing where you now start throbbing in anger. Do you understand? Right? That is where we now manage this energy that we have. Right? Manage this energy that we have. I hope that is clear. I'm taking the time to explain these different things so that you will have much more better comfort at the time that you really do sit down for the meditation and the retreat and this Vesak week that is coming on, because trying to give everything that we possibly have, and of course trying to polish up and know the right technique. Know the right technique. Any other questions?
Can I ask you something, Bante and Rutika?
Yes, yes.
This is the basic I'm asking. Now, when we start the meditation, you tell us to take a deep breath in, right? And then keep on doing that. Isn't it a form of that we are concentrating on that or letting it go? That is my question actually.
Experience. So when now, for example, those 3 breaths that we would usually take in the beginning,
Yeah.
that serves the purpose of being an anchor. Right? That serves a person. And what does an anchor do? When you drop an anchor from a ship, right, or a boat or whatever it is, you now settle yourself there.
Yeah.
The 3 breaths in the beginning, the 3 breaths at the end perform or is for the purpose of acting as an anchor, to anchor the mind from the external world into the internal. That is what it does, right? So serving, because during those 3 breaths, as you all experience, it is a process of relaxation, isn't it? As you take a deep breath in, filling up the chest, and as you hold on to the air within the lungs, you find this sense of difficulty to keep on holding on to the breath. And when you let go of the breath, you realize, my gosh, just by letting go, this sort of ease, this peace, this tranquility, right? Realizing that gives a message to you to say, letting go creates peace. So you inspiring that sense of letting go through the practice. It acts as an anchor. Is that clear, Buddhika?
Yeah. Now I get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. We have time for another one more question, if you have any questions. But if you we'll be doing a similar thing. I mean, we'll take more questions about polishing up our technique tomorrow as well. So if you giving you time to think about whatever it is that you're doing and the things and areas of concern that you might be having. But remember, if you get the technique right, that's all you need, right? From that point onward, you can continue your practice significantly alone. But it is really hacking this technique in the beginning. Before that, don't concern yourself with Patija Sampada, don't concern yourself with Noble Eightfold Truths or Four Noble Truths. Forget all of that. Hack this letting go practice first, right? Know the proper technique of letting go and what it entails. That will then give you the strong foundation to go into all of the other deep areas of Dhamma and contemplation that you have to go into.
Bante, can I say something, please?
Yes, go ahead.
Bante, I found this very useful because, because we all think we know this, but when you explain, we realize, no, there's something that we hadn't actually got the whole wing of. So I'm very grateful to those who ask questions because it helped us who have been doing this for a longer time. I'm thinking, I don't know what the class is, but I'm just thinking with having a retreat for 13 hours, some of us have done long retreats, so we are used to that time. Others haven't, so it'll be more difficult. However, to really make use of that 13 hours, even for me who has done it, I would like, as you came, you asked, do you know what I mean by this letting go? You mentioned about 6 or 7 things. And luckily somebody picked up one of them and asked questions on that, and you explained to us. I think it will be very, certainly for me, if those things that you ask us, do you know when I say this, what do you know what? If there are questions that other people have which is outside that, that's fine, you must address those. But if you take those things that you asked us as you came to, I know you recorded it, I don't know whether you can put it so we can, you may not have time, but even unedited, if you can put it, we can look at those questions because we don't have it in our mind, and we can see what do we think about it and whether we are clear. But otherwise, if you could take one, if you don't have the time to put it, then if you can take those things and then explain them while taking questions from the class as a priority over what you're saying, I feel it will be really useful for all of us to make a real use of that 13 hours that we are going to sit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, of course, this question answers, and everyone who asks questions, actually, you really do not understand, I think, the importance of these different questions that you ask. They're very, very important. And most people with, being a person who sort of handles people, and handles people in the sense of deals with people in terms of a lot of meditation that they do, a lot of the reason that we often struggle with the Dhamma is because we haven't hacked this technique. And when you do hack the technique, and even if you, let's say, you give up meditation, or just life takes over in a very overwhelming way for a month or 2 or 3, when you know the technique, you can just go back to it so easily, right? So easily, right? Which makes it all the more worth sort of asking these questions and doing all of these things that we do, right? So yes, Dil, anyways, I'm going to start this course on mindfulness and focusing on mindfulness. So we will be focusing on these different questions that people have, which is a separate course, somewhat like the 5-day course that we did at LBV, focusing on these questions and really perfecting this technique. Do not, if you think meditation is difficult for you, it is not difficult. It is only that we haven't understood the technique as yet. When you understand the technique, it is so blissful and peaceful, almost as if you get addicted to it, actually, right? Almost so, as it becomes a real thing that you really miss and you really want to sit down, and it's just beautiful, right? And we all struggle. We all struggle. We are all busy. We all struggle. We have 101 things happening in our life, but we must always remind ourselves about what truly is important, right? And as a Buddhist monk, I had to remind that to myself, even more, right? Even more. So because there's so much happening, there's so much happening. So all right, so that's all the time that we have for today. Thank you so much. I will put up this session right now. I'm not going to edit it. I'll put up this session. So I'll put
Thank
up.
you, Bante.
Yes,
Thank you.
Malik, Yanna.
Sanhasa, the way you told that you don't know anything about the breath, like a small child watch the breath, it was very useful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you don't know anything about, but just watch like, so I felt like 3 persons today. Yeah.
Good.
Watching, yeah.
3 person is good, because 3 person is good, because that is a ability, when you polish that up, that becomes in line with exactly what we require for.
And you feel easier, so no? You are not doing anything. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Is very, very easy. Others might not understand this, but I'll explain this tomorrow if you ask me, right? When you have that 3% mentality, that becomes very, very, very much lighter and very much more easy, and is the framework for proper vipassana as well. So Hemali, good.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it tomorrow, right? So take
Thank
care.
you so much.
All the very best, and have a beautiful day. I know the weather is not the most best weather that you can have, but regardless, who cares?
Bhante, teach us what the Buddha told to Bahia, seeing the sea, because that's what we need to do.
Yeah, Bhante.
Yeah, Bhante, and one of the 1,000
Yes,
you said,
Bhante.
you can give one of that.
One each day.
One to each.
We have done more than one already. You might not know about it, but we have already done more than one.
No.
And I must say, most of you who've stuck with this class, I mean, we've been doing this class for almost a year now. You all really know a lot. You do, right? You know most. I would say you know more than 80% of Buddhists in the world right now, right? And that you might not believe, you might not know it, but you do, right? And I'm telling you that, right? You know, more than 80% of the population of Buddhists in the world, you know more than them. All the data that you have is actually enough. It is now the time to polish it, right? Let's polish it and bring it to a level that we are clear, that we have that clarity. And that's the only thing that we need to do right now, right? That's the only thing that we need to do right now. So really focus on yourself, really question, and don't be afraid. I know that sometimes, I think because we have so many sort of knowledgeable people here, sometimes people are scared, oh, I might be asking a stupid question or not. Don't be concerned with all of that, right? Clear, polish whatever it is that you have, and you can reach, you will reach, if you polish it up, you will reach so much of clarity, which will just bring you instant access into samadhi. We just need to polish it up a little bit more, right? So take care, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Don's talk is tonight, so I hope you come, right? And share it with the others and all of that as well. And tomorrow we have 2 talks also. So I know that life might be taking over, but for Vesak week, share it with your friends and family and all of that. Take care and have a lovely day.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you.